my mother and father had the choice of that, but Mother didn't like it. She didn't like the diamond windows. She regretted that afterward, but never mind. That's now commercial offices. Next to that, the road recessed. There was a shop there, or it was a shop once. It had a big glass front and a steel barred gate and a door. Well, that window was painted over with a brown paint with a gap of about 1 foot of plain glass. That belonged to Tolmash's bottling stores, and the women, and there were many, who worked in that bottling stores. That was their restroom, and also their room where they had their meals. There were no canteens in those days, so they had a gas ring and a kettle, table, or a bench I should say, in forms, and they ate their packed meals there. Well, that had a back entrance into the bottling stores. It wasn't the stores actually, it was a huge place where machines were, and bottled of beers and whatever, but that was called the stores. So they went right to their work. Coming out of there, next door, was another antique shop, but he specialised in wonderful old carved tables and chairs, whatnots, sideboards and things like that. He did a good business there, and he stayed there for as long as ever I can remember. Next to that was Mr English the baker. Well, he didn't specialise in cakes as Mr Welch did further down the road. He made all different sorts of bread. Cottage loaves, rolls, twists, tin loaves, Devonshire loaves, but he also made milk rolls. They were nice. He used to make loaves of bread which were all plaited. He did make donuts, he did make bakewell tarts, and he made some sort of cakes that I can't remember. They were square, they were golden brown, and there were different sort of cake inside them, sandwich, in which there were plums and currants. We leave him and we start on Sneezum's. Now that occupied about 100 feet of Fore Street. After leaving Mr English's baker shop, they had a shop which specialised in new clothing, overcoats, suits, waistcoats, breeches.
Oh, that's all, yes.
And things like that. Then he was also a pawnbroker. But then next to that, in the same shop, but separate, was the unpledged clothing that had never been claimed. Obviously, they'd been worn, and obviously they were cheaper. So you took your pick and paid the price. Next to that was a boot and shoe shop. They didn't have rubber boots in those days that I'm talking about. You had what we call clodhopper boots that farmers used. Big, heavy ones, reasonably waterproof. There was leggings and raincoats, oilies, which were black oil coats they called them, and again sou'westers. Well, they were hats which fitted the head but had a peak on the front and a tailpiece at the back.
Yeah, well,
They were heavily stitched. That allowed the water, with a man's collar up, to run down the small of his back.
Well, yes, all the fishermen wore them, didn't they?
Fishermen had them. Then you'd have a variety of walking sticks and shooting sticks. Well, next to that, you'd have the gun store. He'd sell 410s and any sort of gun you could think about. Large and small punt guns. I've seen a punt gun in there, one of the long ones. Revolvers.
Yeah, well, he sold guns.
And everything like that. Then next to that, you've got watches, clocks, new ones for sale. Then you'll get necklaces, rings, sort of things women war, then there was a door. Then 3 or 4 doors in that business. But then there was another door, and there was a window, went right to the end of the shop, and it was a round window. Well, in there was the unredeemed pledges, which for sale. They were in good order. They was not, you didn't buy a watch with no inside in it, or one that was no use, because they look after their watches.
Yes.
But obviously, you bought at a cheaper price. But some of them were valuable. And naturally enough, there were people around who picked the valuable ones out. Well, that was Sneezum's. They had a huge stock there because that was a three-storied building. They had a huge stock of everything. Well, that was Sneezum's. That terminated in the peak of a triangle because at the back of Sneezum's was another road. You crossed the road and you came to 3 cottages. A woman, Mrs. Lloyd, lived in one of them. They were nice cottages with their usual geraniums in the window and all their pot plants. Then you had a yard which belonged to the wholesale fruiterer. He kept his carts up there. Then next to that yard was a store place where he kept, I suppose, his potatoes and cabbages and things. Well, he kept that for a while. Next to that window was Martin and Newby's. They sold nails, garden tools, carpenter's tools, engineer's tools.
They sold everything.
Everything. Nails from screws to hatchets, hinges. Well, they expanded. That incidentally was a tall shop. That was built in 1808. The date is on the top of the building, and that had 3 peaks on the roof. That had big glass windows on the 2nd floor. Well, he expanded down towards Fore Street again and bought the property that Mr. Ellis had for stores. Well, next to Martin and Newby's was a newsagent shop.
Yeah, but outside Martin and Newby's, they used to have those big lamps hanging, didn't they?
They had gas lamps hanging out,
Yes.
as Sneezum's did also.
Uh-huh.
But next to Martin Newby's was a newsagent shop. We were well known around there. I went to school with 2 of the boys. Along next to that was a wooden fence. That was the yard of the Bull's Head Public House. Now, we've been the length of Fore Street. You know what you're going to do if you're going to switch it up? Now, we've finished that side of Fore Street. We're now crossing over the other side of Fore Street, but we're starting where we began the first part, namely at the Earl Grey Public House.